I just wanted to take a moment to rise with my Republican colleagues and my Democratic colleagues in support of this resolution. Despite the fact that as I was coming into my politically formative years in college and Ronald Reagan was campaigning and then serving as president, there were many, many issues with which I strongly disagreed and that actually inspired me to work that much harder in the political arena. But as President Obama said during the campaign, unquestionably, President Reagan was a transformative leader. He was somebody who became the model for the Republican Party in many ways and one of the strongest Republican leaders in our lifetime. And he was somebody that brought people together in this country at a time of great crisis, great unrest, great angst, and nervousness about our future. But he was also a leader who led with courage. And when that meant setting aside partisan dogma, he was prepared to do that. And as some of my colleagues mentioned earlier, that even meant, at times, dealing with revenues that were much needed in this state. Ronald Reagan's 1967 tax increase included increases to the sales tax, to the income tax rate, to the bank, corporation, and inheritance taxes, to the inheritance taxes, which my Republican colleagues like to refer as the death tax. The inheritance tax was something that Ronald Reagan raised. The distilled liquor tax, the cigarette tax. All of these things were things that Ronald Reagan was willing to consider. And when he was roundly criticized within the Republican Party and within the business community for doing that, he stood up and defended his position because it was in the interests of California to do so. Madam Speaker, permission to read?
Without objection.
In an address by Governor Reagan to the United Republicans of California Convention in May of 1967, Ronald Reagan said, "During the campaign, it looked almost as if we could put our fiscal house in order without resorting to new taxes. We didn't know just how bad the situation was then. Now we've had a chance to, and a chance to read the fine print. As a result, we have, as you know, submitted a revenue bill for nearly $1 billion in increased taxes. Because of this, there has been some editorial jumping up and down with glee, holding that this makes a failure in our long-held belief in the economy. Let's set the record straight right here and now." And then Ronald Reagan defended his position point by point to the United Republicans of California. That's the kind of leadership I think California is counting on us to provide right now. That's the kind of nonpartisanship and focus on what California needs that Californians are crying out throughout the state for us to offer now. And I think, if I may read one more thing, I think we know why Ronald Reagan was so focused on doing the right thing. And it's revealed in some of the later things that he said in his speeches, like in his 1976 To Restore America speech, in which he said, "No one who lived through the Great Depression can ever look upon an unemployed person with anything but compassion. To me, there is no greater tragedy than a breadwinner willing to work with a job skill but unable to find a market for that job skill. Back in those dark Depression days, I saw my father on a Christmas Eve open what he thought was a Christmas greeting from his boss. Instead, it was the blue slip telling him he no longer had a job. The memory of him sitting there holding that slip of paper and then saying in a half whisper, 'That's quite a Christmas present. It will stay with me as long as I live.'" And you know, every one of us has received a letter like that from a constituent. Every one of us has heard from people in our districts that that's what's happening right now in California. Let's all be inspired by the memory of Ronald Reagan. Let's all lead with the courage that Ronald Reagan showed. Let's help those unemployed in California who are struggling right now. Let's pass a budget and get California back to work. Thank you, Madam Speaker.